Where are the ways you've over-owned that? The second way that we can cultivate ownership, again, because if passivity is really dangerous to our faith, ownership's the way out, what's the second way we can do it? Grief and loss. Grief and loss. Listen to Jonah. It sounds like he's grieving in the first few verses. This reads so much like a psalm of lament. It's like, man, my life was in the pit. I was going down. You're like, great. This is a guy who's grieving something that happened. But it says this, in my distress, I called to the Lord and he answered me. We're like, yes, wonderful. From the deep, in the realm of the dead, I cried for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths, to the very heart of the sea, and the currents swept over me. All your waves and your breakers swept over me. And I said, I've been banished from your sight. How can I look toward your temple? He starts by grieving, and then he shifts midway and is like, hey, but this isn't my fault. Right? You threw me, and now I'm not even able to pray. This is awful. What Jonah is doing is he is unwilling to grieve what has been lost. One of the reasons we struggle to own the things that happen, to actually say, hey, the situations I find myself in, I have either created or I have allowed. One of the main reasons we struggle to do that, and it feels scary to do that, is because we haven't grieved how that's gone badly in the past. We haven't grieved. Passivity feels like control. Passivity feels like control. If I don't do anything, I'm not going to be disappointed. If I just stay here, you can't hurt me. I'm in control. Underneath that, I would say, is an unwillingness to grieve that that's happened to us before. Grieving loss. The New Testament mentions the book of Jonah. Jesus in Matthew 12 talks about this very passage. And it's really strange how he uses this passage. What Jesus says about this passage, we hear it and we're like, what? Jesus, that doesn't feel like that's in this passage at all. Like, how do you read the Bible, Jesus? The religious leaders are mad at Jesus, and they come after him. They wanted a sign. He was unwilling to give them a sign. They didn't ask for a sign because they were spiritually curious. They asked for a sign because they were trying to test Jesus and be like, ha, we don't have to listen to you, we don't have to believe you. And Jesus says this, here's a sign I'll give you. Just like Jonah was in the whale 3 days and 3 nights, so I will die and come back. And you're like, what? I do not see the connection here. Here's what Jesus is saying, and here's another thing happening in this passage. God has so wired the world that life comes out of death. In order for something new to start, something has to die. Take our situation we talked about earlier. God, if you could just really make it clear, am I supposed to leave this job? What's happening there? A death. A death. And what are we doing with our passivity? We're trying to avoid facing death and loss. I do not like this about how God wired the world. New things only come out of dead things. In order to grow, we have to leave something else. And here's what Jesus says, though, about Jonah. I'll go first. I'll die. I will die, and I'll bring about this new thing that God is doing. It's called the kingdom of God. And it's breaking into this old thing. Oh, and sometimes when the new breaks into the old, by the way, the old doesn't like it. Oh, it can get ugly. And that's a form of death. You might lose relationships giving yourself over to the kingdom of God, giving yourself over to this new thing. But I'll go first. I'll die. And I'll show you that newness comes out of that. There's grief in that. Please, like sometimes we just flatten the characters of the Bible. It was hard for Jesus to give his life for us. He was crying. Luke the doctor says he was crying blood. But life only comes when something dies. There are things in your life that are dead. And we're not yet ready to let go of them. And the answer to that conundrum is not passivity. It's not, well, let's just wait and see what happens. Maybe I can fix this. It's letting it die and grieving it with a God who died first. Jonah is unwilling to grieve in Jonah chapter 2. He has failed, right? Prophets have one job. You had one job! Prophets just say what God said. What did God say? Hey, I really love Nineveh. Go to Nineveh. Jonah doesn't do that. And he's unwilling to just like, hey, God, I biffed it. I messed it up. No, what happened? God, well, you threw me and I couldn't pray. And so I'm in this fish. It was hard. Instead of grieving, oh man, I'm here because I created this and allowed this. And it's not working, God. And I'm going to grieve it. How do you grieve? I don't fully know. Sorry. But I do know this. Grief starts with staring at things. Staring at the loss and naming it. To say, hey God, this relationship, it's not working. Hey God, this way I have of showing up, of just calling my life, like, God, I'm being content. That's not working anymore. And I have to grieve that season. One of the things that happens to me, just as I get older, I'm only 23, but as I get, older, this weird thing happens to me with adults. It's happened like 20 times. Adults will say this, like, man, I learned this amazing insight, or I learned like some emotional intelligence, or I learned this biblical truth at 60. Where was this when I was 30? Like, man, I would have really loved these tools when I was raising my family. Now that I've raised my family, I learned, oh my gosh, I just was a completely unregulated person screaming at kids. Wish I would have known that when I had the kids. And all I know is like, hey, we name that and we look and we grieve. Like, man, God, I wish I had learned this sooner. And I grieve the time that I didn't know it. And I know it now. Grief. Again, you have to keep in mind, not everything is your fault, but things are your problem. There's a professor, his name is Vic Stretcher. I think he's a professor at the University of Michigan. And the worst thing that could happen to a person happened to Vic. His daughter was born with a heart defect. And they were, living overseas, and they didn't know, and it took a long time to diagnose. She gets a heart transplant. And she just said right away, like, oh my gosh, I got this like zap of energy. Is this how everybody lives? This is amazing. And she's rocking through life. That happened when she was maybe 12 years old. At 19, her new heart fails. And this girl was the life of the party. Everybody loved this girl. She gets on a list, she's going to get a second heart transplant. A couple weeks before the surgery, she dies. Not Vic's fault. I would never wish that on anyone. The hell you go through. So Vic, I don't think he's a person of faith. He had a cabin up on Lake Michigan. He goes to that cabin to deal with it. And his way of dealing with it was just watching television all day with bourbon. And he said, I had never been a person who watched TV, and now all of a sudden, the only comfort in life I have is keeping up with the Kardashians and falling asleep. And about 2 weeks of that, he realized, I'm going to die. If I keep doing this, I am going to die. He wasn't a very spiritual person. He's a scientist. He's a professor. He goes to bed one night, and he has a dream where his daughter appears to him. She's a little girl, and they're running. And then somewhere in the dream, these older women appear. They're adults, and they're in prom dresses. And then his daughter's with them, and then she disappears. And so he just goes out, and it's maybe summer, but there's still snow on the ground, Michigan. And so he goes out, and he gets a kayak, and he just starts kayaking like a crazy person out onto Lake Michigan at 6 in. And he's mad, and he's like, I want to see my daughter. And he thought somehow if I can kayak to Wisconsin, maybe that dream will come back. It just felt so real. And so he kayaks out, and he keeps kayaking. And as he gets out there, he sees an amazing sunset where the sun is just reflecting off the little ice crystals on the water. And he's blown away by the beauty of it. And he's realizing, here I am, a middle-aged man in my boxer shorts, out on Lake Michigan. I'm a public safety professor. I have no life jacket on. What am I doing? And this very strong voice came from inside of him. You're not grieving. Let her go. And as he grieved his daughter and as he let her go, as a completely secular person, you know what his very first question was? What am I living for? Oh my word, I had this beautiful gift, and because I wasn't grieving, 2 lives were being lost. And in that moment, he said, I felt this calling to care for my students, to pour into the next generation. Now, that may create a lot of questions theologically for us. We're like, what in the world? What do I know about that? Here's the main thing I just want you to pay attention to in that story. Grief, letting things die, always kicks the door open for life. We don't have Easter without Good Friday. There are things in our lives that we have not grieved. And when we name them and bring them to God, nothing will add rocket fuel to your purpose faster. If passivity gets us stuck, then grief is one of the greatest tools we have toward ownership. Say, God, this didn't work out the way I wanted it to. This shouldn't have happened. It's very sad. God, what do you want me to own in it? And what do you want me to, what good thing am I mourning that hasn't happened? And when we're able to do that, we experience trust. That's how God enters his creation. God lets his creation kill him. Why? So that new life can come. One of the scariest things Jesus says is this: if anyone wants to be my disciple, he must take up his cross and follow me.